Oh, are you quite agreeable to proceeding with the experiment, Mr. Blyvis?
Yes.
Why should he agree to be the subject to a mind-reading experiment?
English mentality. By agreeing, he's proclaiming publicly his conscience is clear, straightforward, everything above board. Actually, he probably doesn't believe in it. Feels it's perfectly safe.
Now, Mr. Blyvis, put everything else out of your mind. Just think of your wife. Mr. Blyvis, you're not thinking of your wife.
I am thinking of her.
When did you last see your wife, Mr. Blyvis?
Friday night. The night she disappeared.
Did she say anything?
Didn't she always?
Did she threaten to leave you or anything like that?
No. I've always been a good husband. You can ask anyone. Why should she want to leave me?
I don't know, Mr. Blyvis. Do you know what's happened to her?
Maybe somebody did her in. Why should she want to leave me?
I want you to think of your house, Mr. Blyvis. Your house. Think of the kitchen, the bedroom, the little garden in the back, the river, the road leading to the town.
No.
The kitchen, the garden in the back.
No.
Badly about it, Miss Downing. Blyvis is a tough nut. We didn't really expect you to get anything, you know.
He killed his wife in the kitchen. I think you'll find her body in the garden at the back of the house.
Okay, girls, hold it. Sorry, girls, another one.
Morning, Linda.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hello, Mr. Street.
Hello, Tina.
Hello, Mike.
I don't believe we've met.
I'm Paula.
How are you, Paula? How are you, Susie?
I'm fine, Mr. Straight.
Good. Pull in the tummy a little bit, huh?
Okay. Hold it. All right, girls, take a break. We'll be ready for the next setup in 10 minutes. Like them?
Yeah, these British models have got a lot of carriage here.
Why don't you do a story on me, Mike? I can tell what's in your mind, at least.
You may not be telepathic, Linda, but you're thoroughly female.
I'm very content with the situation. Thank you. It's fun coordinating a sitting with you, Mike. It's been a long time since we worked together.
Well, what with Maggie tied up at the Paris fashion showings, I was lucky you were free.
Like to share a cup of disgusting coffee with me?
Hmm. Oh, thank you.
Poisonous, isn't it?
It's hot, at least. Did you rustle up those newspapers for me?
Mm-hmm. do you think? Is she telepathic?
Pretty good crystal balling. She was right on every count. Blyvis confessed.
What's she like?
Young, about 19. Born here, Bedford. Her mother died when she was very young, and her father took her out to Malaya. Some sort of a plantation job, I gather. A few years there, then South Africa. They lived there and they came to England about 6 months ago.
And her father?
I only talked to him briefly at Scotland Yards, but he's convinced that his daughter's clairvoyant.
How did you come into all this?
Well, Professor Harding of the Neurological Institute's an old friend. He'd heard about the girl and thought I might be interested in watching the experiment.
Professor Harding's a very famous man. Does he really believe that this girl can read minds?
Well, Harding's a psychiatrist, you know. Mind reading's a little out of his line. He just thought that she might be an interesting subject.
Well, she's certainly got something. Blyvis wouldn't have cooperated. Can't be faked.
Well, Blyvis knew in advance that he was going to be questioned by a mind reader.
What difference would that make?
He could have been frightened silly before she walked into the room. Or she could have been playing a kid's game of hot and cold. She kept mentioning all the places, watching his reactions.
Did you see any reactions?
Nope, not a flicker.
There you are.
Well, at any rate, it's a story worth following up. Could be another Bridie Murphy.
Bridie who?
Murphy, good old Irish name. Haven't you ever heard of her? Well, her subconscious took over and she became another person that lived 100 years earlier.
What a divine idea. I must start concentrating. Have you got anybody in mind?
Yeah, cute little gal, short red hair. Looks like a librarian that might pick up a few books on extrasensory perception for me. And by the way, check all the theaters, see if there's a mind reading act playing around, huh? See you later, girls.
Aren't you staying, Mr. Straight?
I'll see you all later. Look, I'm going to pay Miss Downing's father a call, see if I can set up an interview. Check with you later.
Bye. Don't get hit by any flying tables. Okay, girls. This is the last group. Hold it.
I'm sorry, Paul. That's all I can say.
If you'd even told me.
Would that have made any difference?
I don't know. But at least I'd have had some warning that all this claptrap was going to be spread about you all over the papers.
Is that what you think it is? Claptrap?
Of course I do. So would anybody outside an asylum. Oh, sorry. Look, I didn't mean it exactly like that.
I know. But I still don't understand why you're so angry about it.
I'm not angry. It's just that I love you and we're going to be married.
Then why should it matter?
Why? All those reporters here today interviewing you. And tomorrow it's going to be splashed all over the papers. Mystic powers, mental telepathy, mind reader. And that's nothing to what I've been hearing at the hospital this morning.
I guess I didn't stop to think if it would upset you. It was just that Father wanted me to do it, and it really didn't seem so terrible.
Oh, it's not terrible. It's just that, well...
There's something more, isn't there, Paul? You're almost afraid of me.
Afraid? Oh, now tell me, just what am I supposed to be afraid of? That it isn't a trick, that you really can read minds?
Yes,
Oh, that's nonsense.
I just read your mind, Paul.
If I actually believed that, Carla, if I really thought that you could read my mind, what possible hope could there be for us then? But I don't believe it, not for a moment. Look, Lovey, I'm going to be a doctor. That means I believe in reason, right? That there's a rational explanation for everything, no matter how strange or odd it may seem at first. Bubonic plague isn't caused by demons, and leeches don't cure tuberculosis. Oh, sure, there are some things that we don't have any rational explanation for. Somebody dies, for instance, and we don't know how or why, even after an autopsy. But that doesn't mean that they come back as a ghost at a seance when somebody spews out some mumbo-jumbo over a candle. Look, Carla, you're a very lovely and a very sensitive girl. And you're intuitive and perceptive. I've known all this about you since the first time I met you, but...
But there are things about me that you don't know, Paul. Things I should have told you.
There's nothing you have to tell me, except that you love me.
You know that.
Look, I've got to get back to the hospital. The old man's doing an autopsy on a hit and run, all scrambled up inside. Terribly interesting.
Oh, it sounds dreadful.
Does it?
Hmm.
I expect you'll have to stiffen up a bit when you're a doctor's wife, eh? Hey, no more vaudeville stunts, though, eh? I expect half the population already thinks that you're possessed. A freak or some sort of witch or something. Mr. Downing?
Paul, I didn't know you were here.
I had half an hour to spare, so I came over to see Carla.
Well, I see you out.
Look, sir, you must realize this sort of thing is no good for Carla.
What sort of thing do you mean exactly, Paul?
This tripe.
It's quite definitely not tripe, my dear boy. Oh, and by the way, I wouldn't count on seeing Carla for the next few days.
Oh, why not?
A very influential journalist, Mr. Michael Straight, is due around any moment to give her an interview. No doubt he'll want to spend a great deal of time with her. Pictures, backgrounds, all that sort of thing.
So do you know what you're doing by forcing Carla into all this?
I think so. Carla is going to become a person of some distinction and importance.
Importance? But any teenage thug or football pool winner can get his picture in the paper. That doesn't make them important.
I don't believe you quite understand the situation, Paul.
No, I don't suppose I do. One thing I do know. Carla's too sensitive a girl for all this. 6 months ago when I first met her, she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. If you insist upon pushing her into this, she could crack up completely.
Excuse me, could you tell me where Marbone Street might be?
Yes, it's to the left of the next corner.
Oh, thank you.
Straight? Michael Straight?
That's right.
Leave her alone.
I beg your pardon.
I'm warning you. I'm not having Carla turned into a cheap music hall act just so that you can sell a few more papers.
You're her boyfriend.
Never mind who I am. Just leave her alone. Please.
Come in, sir. Come in.
Thank you.
How about a drink? Whiskey, gin, sherry, it's all here.
No, thank you.
You don't mind if I do?
Please.
Please, sit down, make yourself at home.
Thanks.
Of course, it entirely depends on how you handle the story. I wouldn't countenance anything sensational, you know. I'd like to make that clear right away.
Well, I've already been warned on that score. I just ran into a young man out on the street.
Ah, Paul.
Your daughter's fiancé, I take it.
Oh, I'm sure it's not as serious as that.
Yes, well, the young man seemed to think it was.
I'm afraid he's a little bit jealous. Not of someone else. Simply that he can't accustom himself to what has happened. After all, people all over the world are going to hear about Carla. She's very special. Perhaps the most special person anywhere.
That doesn't seem to bother you at all.
Have you ever been to Leeds, Mr. Straight?
I've passed through it.
I can't say I can blame anyone for not wanting to linger there. I were born in Leeds, lad. My father worked in a mill as a clerk. Well, not even that, really. Someone used to call out bail numbers, and he used to scribble them down. So I wanted something better for myself. I'm afraid that I sank into the general rut like everybody else. For a time, I tried to be an actor. 2 years in a provincial repertory, and then nothing to do but to twiddle my thumbs in an agent's office. Then, a miserable attempt to run a rubber plantation in Malaya. And for the last few years, accountancy in a mining office in South Africa. Not so much different from scribbling down bail numbers, eh? But She's different. Like a great painter or musician. It's a talent that only occurs once in a millennium. Shouldn't I be proud of her? As her father, shouldn't I want the whole world to know about it? Of course, I don't want her presented as a freak or anything of that sort, but you must give me your assurance on that.
I'll do the story as objectively and honestly as possible. But it will have to be as I see it, with no hindrance or pressure from you or anyone else. That's the only way I work.
Of course. You're not really convinced about Carla, are you, Mr. Straight?
Did you expect me to be?
You saw her at Scotland Yard?
Yes. But that doesn't prove anything. Blyvis knew she was coming, and why? Naturally, he was nervous, and he was guilty. Any slight reaction of his could have keyed her.
You're a trained observer, Mr. Straight. Did you notice any reaction on the murderer's part?
No. But that, too, doesn't prove anything. A racehorse seems to be leaping off the ground as he runs. It took a camera to prove that he doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Come in, my dear. This is Mr. Michael Straight.
Yes, I know.
Mr. Straight wants to write a story about you.
Oh?
You don't sound too enthusiastic about that.
Oh, it's not that. It's just that...
The boy that was just here?
Yes.
Paul simply doesn't understand yet. He will do in time.
I'm not sure, Father.
Do you remember what I used to tell you, even when you were a little girl? Someday, I said, you're going to be very important. Someone that everybody will be aware of. Do you remember that? Well, now it's all going to happen, just as I said. You mustn't let Paul or me or anybody stand in your way. Besides, Mr. Straight only wants to ask you a few questions, to talk to you. Nothing more than that. Isn't that right?
For now, yes.
So you see, Carla?
Yes. You want me to do it?
I want it for you.
All right. But I'd rather not start today. Would that be all right?
Of course.
It's just that I have a ticket to a concert at the Albert Hall. I was just going out there now to catch the underground.
Well, perhaps I could walk along with you.
If you like.
Mr. Darling? Should be one along in a moment or two.
The concert doesn't start till 3. I have plenty of time.
You like music, Carla?
More than anything, I think. When I was little, I used to listen for hours at a time while my mother played the piano. Whenever I'm nervous or upset, I always listen to a record or go to a concert, and then things seem better.
You're upset now, I take it.
A little, I suppose.
Carla, are you all right?
Yes, thank you. It's just the noise.
The noise?
Yes. When we first came to London, I didn't think I could stand it. Lights everywhere, and horns and sirens and people shouting. Once, I was crossing Westminster Bridge when suddenly bells began to ring out from somewhere, and foghorns and train whistles. I just stopped. I couldn't move. And people ran up to me, and their voices were pouring over me like a great ocean. I guess I just fainted or collapsed. Next thing I knew, I was in St. Thomas's Hospital, and Paul was taking care of me.
That's how you met?
Yes. Silly sort of way to get a man, isn't it? Oh, I'd love to be there right now.
Where?
The Chilterns. My mother came from there. She died when I was very young, but I can remember her taking me to her home when I was a little girl. It was so quiet and peaceful. I felt very happy there.
I can imagine. Just the river and the hills.
Mother and I used to walk along the towpath just under the bridge. You can see the hills all blue and hazy in the distance.
Would you like to go back, Carla?
When I'm worried, when I'm like this, I can see it very clearly. It's not like anywhere else in the world, you know. For me, it's a very special place. What are you going to write about me, Mr. Straight?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I'm still feeling the story out.
I suppose you'll end up by saying I'm possessed. A sort of latter-day witch. That's what they all want to read, I imagine. Like going to a freak show. But it's not a person's fault the way they're born. I know if I was born a cripple or anything, Paul would understand about it and not mind. But this...
Suppose after my investigation, I simply write that I think you're a very clever fraud. That's what Paul thinks, isn't it?
He does now. But he's already a little afraid of me. And if he ever finds out the truth...
What is the truth? That you are a real telepath?
Do you think I'm a fake?
I think it's possible, yes.
Oh, I wish I were, Mr. Straight. Oh, I wish I were.
Soho's packed with fortune tellers. This was the only mind-reading act I could find.
He's pretty good, isn't he? You know something? I've got a hunch he's a complete phony.
Well, then how can he possibly help?
Well, he might be able to tell me something that would give me a lead on Carla Downing. She seems so sincere. I hadn't expected that.
Haven't you learned yet that all women are sincere when they're dealing with a man?
Yeah, well, it's something more than that. Galvano?
Si, that is I, Sandro the Great Galvano.
May I speak to you a minute?
Impossible. My private hours for consultation is morning only. Then it is £3. It is a matter of the art, no?
No.
Ah, then it is finance, yes?
For a mind reader, you're hitting a little wide of the mark, Sam.
I do not understand you. I know speak the English very well.
That's strange. A friend of mine checked out your work permit. Seems you're from Chicago. Now, the last time I passed through Chicago, they were speaking English, more or less.
Okay, so what do you want?
Like I said, a couple of questions.
Take a break, kid. So shoot.
How much does an act like yours depend on carefully planned tricks?
All of it, for sure. I don't think all of it is a snap. I started picking up the trade while I was still a kid back in Chicago.
Well, I talked to a fellow who calls himself the Pharaoh. Now, he says that...
Max Farrell, he's strictly a muscle reader. You know, a flick of an eyelid, a slight change of breathing, a shoulder twitch, anything that gives them a key.
Well, he insists he's a genuine mind reader.
He's gone shut-eye, that's all.
Shut-eye?
That's an expression we have in the business. When a muscle reader gets good at it, he does it without even thinking. And then they actually believe they are reading minds. When that happens, we say they've gone shut-eye. I'm sorry, pal. I've got to go now. I've got to change for the second half.
Oh, look, just one other question. Did you read about Carla Downing?
Yeah, real good. Got to take the professors to figure her act. And that's saying something. You can't beat them. I should know. I tried it twice back in the States. Both times they caught me cold. There's no way to beat them. Unless, who knows, maybe this is the girl who can.
Do you think it's possible?
That's anyone's guess, friend.
Galvano may be right. A controlled scientific test. Harding would be just the fellow for that.
He's the one who told you about the girl in the first place, isn't he?
Yeah. He's an odd one, but he's the best in his field. He's done a lot of research on extrasensory perception.
What about the father? He's not going to stand for any scientific investigation.
Well, he'll have to if he wants me to write the story. And for whatever reason, I think he wants that very much. Everything's all ready, Professor.
Good. May as well plunge into it and get it over.
These tests you've set out for the girl, are you sure they're enough to pick up any tricks she might be using?
Oh, there are more elaborate devices that I could use, but there's no necessity for it, no necessity at all. Look, young man, do you know how many of these frauds I've unmasked? Dozens. Dozens. Usually within the first 5 minutes. Bogus, the whole lot of them.
You feel, then, there can't be such a thing as a true telepath?
Can't. There's no such thing as can't in science.
Well, then, if Carla passes all the tests you've set out for...
If, that would be something, a chance to work with somebody like that. Mike, they tell me that I've squandered the entire family fortune on my research. Babies' bottles. That's what the old man made his money out of. Babies' bottles. Squandered indeed. Come on. Let's see how telepathic this one is.
A star? A square? No, a circle. A square. Another square. Wavy lines. A cross. A star.
The numbers test?
Yeah.
What's this for?
To stop pencil top reading. It's possible for some to watch the pencil top and then reverse the motion in their head and translate it into writing. We've been fooled several times before we caught on to that.
7. 11.
May I?
Of course. 1 to 99. She can't handle 3 figures.
11 again. 5. 2. 12. 8. 7.
No, there's no need. There's no point in going any further.
What, you're done?
35 out of 50. The odds against chance are astronomical. Never in the whole history of psychic research has anybody come even remotely as close as that.
Well, what about the Zinner card?
Pure chance will give you 5 out of 25. She has 19. 19. Out of the thousands I've tested, only this girl...
You see? I told you. The cards, the numbers, and now the dice. Nobody can doubt you now, Carla. You heard what Professor Harding said.
Yes. I heard him.
Now, let's go through them once more, only this time let's concentrate on pictures of the father.
Well, if he's using any signals, it doesn't show in the pictures.
Hold it. Let's go back to the first one. Got an idea. Now, run them through as fast as you can until I tell you to stop. Hold it. Now, there you are. See that outline? Dowling's head is a good inch forward.
Well, naturally, his head's going to move a little.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's impossible to relate head movement to specific center cars.
You're still convinced this girl is faking?
Not just the opposite. She's genuine, at least in her own mind. She sincerely believes that she's psychic. So does her father and Harding. They've convinced her that she has this power. Her father openly, and Harding perhaps unconsciously. His reputation as a scientist and his obvious reaction to the test yesterday. Now, Carla Dowling really believes that she can read people's minds.
But that doesn't make sense. If there's any faking, it must come from her, not from them.
Well, there's only one other possibility. Auditory hyperacuity. You ever heard of that?
No.
Neither had I until after the test yesterday. Harding mentioned it, so I checked it out with a physiologist at the university. It's the ability to read involuntary lip movements and to hear involuntary whisperings. The 5 senses are more acute. It's rare, very rare, but it does exist.
Well, wouldn't Carla be aware of it?
Why? She thinks she's as normal as anyone else.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is, and it isn't. Look, how would you know that your hearing is any better than my hearing unless we were tested together? I doubt if her father realizes that.
Aren't you forgetting about Blyfus?
Well, it all ties in. Galvano was talking about the same thing, only used a different name. Muscle readers. People whose eyesight and perception is so acute that they can detect any physical reaction that, well, even a camera couldn't catch. You know, Carla could have trapped Blyfus by unconsciously observing his change of color, his respiration rate, muscle tone. And if she were a true hyperacuistic, she could even smell his glandular reactions to fear.
It's like living in a nightmare, without ever knowing that you were different to everyone else.
Mr. Straight, I'm terribly worried. Something has happened to Carla. She's disappeared.
Exactly what do you mean she's disappeared?
She's not at home.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Mr. Straight, Carla's never done anything like this to me before. She always tells me what she's doing and where she's going. She didn't even come home last night. She hasn't phoned. She might be anywhere.
Did you notify the police?
I've just come straight from Inspector Melton's office. They seem to think she's doing it for publicity. Carla's not like that. It's just the reverse. It's I that have to push her into the limelight.
Are you sure she's gone?
Of course. I have phoned everybody in London who might possibly know where she is. She hasn't been in touch with any of them. And that fellow, Paul Willoughby, seems to think the fault is ours.
Ours?
For putting her through all these tests.
Maybe he's right. If something has happened to Carla, it could very well be our fault.
As a matter of fact, she left this note.
Please forgive me, Father. I have to go away by myself for a little just to think. Don't blame me, but I must find peace.
What does she mean? Find peace? Sure you don't think that she...
No, I don't think Carla would ever do anything stupid. Maybe I can find her and bring her back. That is, if she wants to come back.
Why shouldn't she want to come back?
You still don't know what she's running away from, do you, Mr. Downing?
No.
I'm afraid she's running away from you. Give me 24 hours. With any luck, I'll find her.
Chiltons. My mother came from there. She died when I was very young, but I always remember her taking me to her home when I was a little girl. It was so quiet and peaceful. I felt very happy there.
Sure to have the records of Carla's mother's birth here. Then you can look up the name of the village without any trouble.
Simple as that?
Yes. This is Somerset House, where all the records are kept. Nothing like it in the world. For a shilling, I think, you can look up the birth, marriage, death, almost anything you want to know of anyone in the British Isles.
Great spot for a private eye. Here we are. Mary Downing, married 1941 to Henry Downing. Died 1947. Born Church Row, Sonning, Oxon. Linda, if I were to disappear for 24 hours, could you handle my appointments for me?
Of course. But where are you going?
To find Carla Downing. Carla?
I guess I knew you'd find me here.
Don't you think it's time you came back?
Come back to what? Do you know what it's like to be me? Of course you don't. I didn't myself until yesterday, when I found out that I can never have a normal relationship with anyone ever again.
It's not true, Carla.
Yes, it is. Some part of me went on hoping, but when I saw Paul yesterday, after he'd found out about the test, there wasn't love in his face anymore, just fear. That's all I'm ever going to see in people's faces, hatred and fear. But in the past, that's why they burned the witches, isn't it? Because they hated them, because they were afraid.
I don't think you're a witch, Carla.
Oh, no. You'll put something much nicer in your story, won't you? Telepathic, psychic.
I don't believe you're any of those things.
But you watched the tests. You heard Professor Harding. He certified me to the world as a grade A freak, didn't he?
When we were standing in that subway station, do you remember what you wished, Carla?
Yes. That I was a fake.
Maybe I can make that wish come true.
How could you do that? If I were a fake, I would know it.
Maybe not. You see, it's possible for someone to be so sensitive to sound and light that they could hear things that an ordinary microphone wouldn't pick up, see things that a camera could never photograph. It's also possible for such people to receive images subconsciously, to act on them without ever realizing that they've seen or heard anything.
Even if that were true, how could I know it?
There are instruments that could prove it, one way or the other.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. Are you afraid?
Yes. But I'm more afraid of not knowing.
What's this?
It's a lorenograph microphone that's capable of picking up any subvocal sounds that any of us in the room might make. Believe me, it's quite harmless.
But I don't see the necessity for all this.
Please, Father.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Now, for the last series of tests, we had you in a booth. This time, we're going to leave you out in the open. See if your score goes up. All right, Linda?
Number?
13.
Number?
4.
Number?
9.
Number?
3. I don't want to do any more.
It's all right, Carla.
Did I miss any?
No, you called each one.
Linda, would you rewind the tape, please? Now, let's see if we can prove why you get them all. Play back. Turn up the volume a little. A little higher, please.
13. 4. 9. 3.
Turn it off. That was your father's voice, Carla.
But I didn't hear that. I'm sure I didn't.
Linda, would you mind putting this on, please? Hold for. Now, I want you to write a number. Carla?
15.
Another number, Linda. Carla?
9.
That's right.
Now, Paul, would you put on Carla's microphone? Record, Linda. Would you mind picking up one of the Zener cards? Carla?
A circle.
Another, Paul. Carla?
A cross. But I don't understand. If I'm not telepathic, then how?
I'll show you. Excuse me, Linda.
But that's right. Well, that can't be me. I never said anything except that's right.
You didn't realize that you were doing it. You see, almost everyone unconsciously talks to themselves when they're concentrating. Now, let's see if Paul didn't do the same thing.
Circle.
Yes. Auditory hyperacuity. The most amazingly developed case that has ever been encountered. I'm certain of it. Fantastic.
Will you kindly translate that, please, Mike?
That's just Professor Harding's fancy way of saying that Carla has the ability to pick up involuntary articulation, unconscious whisperings.
Well, that's incredible. How could anybody possibly hear that much better than anybody else?
Well, why not? Do we find it hard to believe that one man can run faster than anyone else? That another man can lift a heavier weight?
But wouldn't I know anything about it?
How could you? You were born that way. What could you compare it with? Carla, how could you experience someone else's hearing and realize that yours is keener?
Is it true, Father? Please, I have to know.
Yes. When you were a little girl, you'd jump if a pin dropped on the carpet. When you began to talk, you'd repeat the things that your mother and I used to say. Sometimes things we didn't say, just thought. We took you to a doctor. When he held a watch against your ear, you screamed. We still didn't realize what it was. Then, as you grew older, other people began to notice it too. So finally, we took you to the chief ear specialist at Great Ormond Street. And he told us what Mr. Straight has just told you.
But why didn't you tell me?
Because I wanted you to be different from me, Carla. I wanted you to be important. I guess it's because I've never been anything at all. I was afraid to tell you the truth because I thought if you knew, you wouldn't do it. Can you understand that?
Yes, I can, Father. Do you know, I've just realized the most wonderful thing of all. I'm just like everybody else. I'm perfectly, wonderfully ordinary.
Oh, no, you're not. Well, not to me, anyway.
Hungry?
Starving.
Good. What would you like? Any idea?
Well, you're supposed to be the expert on mental telepathy. You tell me.
Prime ribs, rare. Touch of horseradish, stuffed baked potato, little green salad on the side, right?
I don't know anything about your auditory whatever it is, anyway.
Acuity.
But there's one thing I do know. It's always wiser for a woman to let a man think he can read her mind.
Come on. I'll take you out to dinner.